This is Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Kuhner. The number here is 617-266-6868, 617-266-6868. The text number is 70470. The Iranian cycle. Iran promises to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Trump announces Iran has agreed to a no nukes going forward and opening the Straits deal. Iran yet again bombs ships in the Strait and declares it has a right to have nukes, and then we begin again. And President Trump kind of keeps making the same announcement over and over again. Cut 9A, please, Mike.
We're doing very well, I can tell you. Maybe it'll happen before that. I'm not sure it needs to be extended. Just so you know, Iran wants to make a deal, and we're dealing very nicely with them. We've got to have no nuclear weapons. If we do, that's a big factor. And they're willing to do things today that they weren't willing to do 2 months ago. And it's going to be a good deal. It's going to be a deal with no nuclear weapons.
No nuclear weapons. They're close to making a deal. And in fact, when he was in Nevada, he was saying we were going to have victory very, very shortly. That's cut 100, Mike.
You notice that we're doing very well. And I will say the war in Iran is going along swimmingly. We can do whatever we want. And it should be ending pretty soon. It was perfect. I mean, it's perfect. 17 years in Vietnam and 5 years in Afghanistan and more, much more than that, and all these different places. And I said, we were in there for 2 months. And you know what? We're going to have victory very shortly.
Yeah, very shortly. Sorry, I got cut off a little bit. And on Friday, in a phone interview with CBS, President Trump told them that Iran has agreed to everything and will work with the U.S. to remove its enriched uranium. And he basically said that this is going to happen without involving U.S. ground troops. But when asked who would retrieve it, he said our people. So at least some people are going to have to go there. I don't know, how many. But during negotiations last week in Islamabad, the Iranian regime refused to agree with the U.S. delegation of who was there? Vice President Vance, envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. And they had 6 key red lines, they said, that Iran could not step over. And those included, they had to allow the retrieval of the highly enriched uranium. They had to allow the dismantling of all major nuclear enrichment facilities. They had to end all their uranium enrichment, period. They had to accept a broader peace, security, and the framework for de-escalation. That includes regional allies. They had to fully open the Strait of Hormuz, charging no tolls for passage, and they had to end the funding for terrorist proxies like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. And then Vice President Vance left after giving a final offer, which he was hopeful that the Iranians, after they gave it some thought, would find were in the best interests of both parties. And he was feeling a little miffed that they were not more forthcoming when he left. He made that pretty clear. And he said when he got out of Pakistan that the negotiations are now up to Iran. They will decide what happens next. Cut 9, please, Mike.
What Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff did is that we made very clear, look, these are the things that we're willing to give, but these are the things that we must have. We must have the enriched material out of Iran. We must have their conclusive commitment to not develop a nuclear weapon. And I think that if the Iranians are willing to meet us there, then this can be a very, very good deal for both countries. If they're not willing to meet us there, that's up to them. That's their decision. And really the ball is very much in their court. So you ask what happens next? I think the Iranians are going to determine what happens next. As the President of the United States says, we have the cards. We have the military advantage. advantage. We now have additional economic pressure that we're applying on them through the blockade that we've imposed on their oil coming out of the Straits of Hormuz. So we have a lot of cards. We have the leverage, and we're going to see what the Iranians do with that.
So it was up to the Iranians. And President Trump said, okay, we're just like what you heard in the two cuts I played. The Iranians are all getting set to negotiate again. Everybody's negotiating in good faith. We're really close to it. And then on Friday, he posted on Truth Social, the Strait of Hormuz is completely open and ready for business and full passage. The naval blockade will remain in full force in effect as it pertains to Iran only until such time as our transaction with Iran is 100% complete. This process should go quickly and that most of the points are already negotiated. Thank you for your attention to this matter. It always cracks me up when he does that, when he adds that little line to the end of it. But then came, everything was positive on Friday, right? That the Strait was reopened. And that made a little bit of sense. That the Iranians would have agreed to it because their economy is in big trouble from the blockade of the Straits of Hormuz and from the bombing, by the way. They face losses of more than almost $2 billion. I think it's $1.7 billion from the U.S. blockade of the Iranian ports and the vessels. I think it's an estimate of $400 million per day. That is what it's costing the Iranians to have the Strait blockaded. And the president himself said that the blockade might actually have been more powerful than the bombing. And, so everybody was breathing a sigh of relief and saying, okay, on Friday, it makes sense that they would finally agree to this. And the Strait of Hormuz was declared open after, Iran was crumbling under mounting economic pressure, and there were cheers all the way around. And in Europe, I don't know if you saw any of on these, but I found it very funny. You had Macron, Starmer, welcoming the Hormuz open, which is really nice, except for the fact that they didn't help do any of it. They gave us no assistance whatsoever. And so, now they're really pleased and patting themselves on the back, which I find, a little disingenuous of them. But the Strait had been one of Tehran's last remaining sources of leverage in the conflict. And President Trump found a way to target what remained of the regime and where essentially it would hurt them the most. And I think that Macron and Starmer realized this and thought, now's the time to join in and pat everybody on the back and show that we're on board with Trump, after the fact. So I just as an aside, because I found that extremely funny. But then Saturday rolls around and things change. Now, I'm a Monty Python fan. I don't know if any of you are, but have you seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail? There's a scene in there that is just so apropos of what is going on in Iran. The Black Knight, who's played by John Cleese, is fighting King Arthur, who's played by, God rest his soul, Graham Chapman. And the Black Knight refuses to let King Arthur pass, even though King Arthur is the fiercest fighter in the land. And during their little contretemps in front of the bridge, King Arthur severs both his arms and his legs. And the Black Knight still won't capitulate. In fact, just in case, I have a little cut of it just to remind you of what it was like. Cut 103, Mike.
Now stand aside, worthy adversary.
'Tis but a scratch.
A scratch? Your arm's off.
No, it isn't.
Well, what's that then?
I've heard worse.
You liar.
Come on, you pansy.
You're indeed brave tonight, but the fight is mine.
Oh, had enough, eh?
Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left.
Yes, I have.
Look!
Just a flesh wound.
What are you going to do, bleed on me?
I'm invincible! You're a loony. The Black Knight always triumphs.
Come, Patsy.
Oh, I see. Running away, eh? You yellow bastards! Come back here and take what's coming to you!
Okay. I mean, that to me kind of says it all in regard to Iran. The Blue Knight is Iran, to be honest with you. I mean, do you think I'm wrong? Severed arms and legs in the form of a destroyed infrastructure, dead leadership, destroyed armed forces, and economic crushing caused by the blockade and the bombing. The smart thing to do is, of course, capitulate and give up and save what you can. But do they? No. They sit there with no arms and no legs, bleeding, and call, Donald Trump, President Trump, a yellow bastard, come back and get what's coming to you. This is ridiculous. This is Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Kuhner on the Kuhner Report. Iran, like Monty Python's Black Knight, even with no hope of success, will not give up. They just won't give up. A day after the Strait was declared open, they reversed course on their stand on the Strait and said on Saturday that the Strait was under the full control of Iran's armed forces. And they started to hassle some Indian ships, came under fire as they were going through the Strait. And India, obviously, immediately summoned the Iranian ambassador and said, what the bleep? And Iran had earlier facilitated the safe passage of ships going to India. And now they are firing on them. And Reuters reported that 2 merchant vessels were hit by gunfire as they attempted to cross the Strait on Saturday. And then the Iranian military officials, or, what is left of the Iranian military officials, issued a statement. They said, as long as the United States does not agree to the complete freedom of navigation for vessels, the situation in the Strait of Hormuz will remain tightly controlled and in its previous state. That's according to the Iranian state media agency Fars. I don't know how you determine who's still alive and who to talk to, but that's what they said. And they reiterated that the Strait would stay closed until the U.S. blockade is lifted. And they said no vessel should make any movement from its anchorage in the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman, and approaching the Strait of Hormuz will be considered a cooperation with the enemy and be targeted. And this, of course, has global implications because about 1/5 of the world's oil normally passes through the Strait. And so if you're going to block that up, then it's going to deepen the global energy crisis and push countries into renewed conflict, obviously. And I don't think it's just the Indians that they fired on. I think Revolutionary Guard gunboats opened on a tanker, and then there was an unknown projectile hit a container vessel that damaged some containers. And this is according to the British military's United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations Center. The problem that you have, of course, is that you have factions of people who aren't under anybody's control. That they're taking. You have these different factions thinking that they're in control. And so one faction may agree to do something, and another faction decides it's going to use shoulder-launched missiles or whatever to go after boats in the Strait. And the new supreme leader, who is Ayatollah, I'm not great at these pronunciations, but Ayatollah Motabi Khamenei issued very defiant remarks on Saturday, saying that his navy, whatever is left of it, that's not at the bottom of the Gulf, is ready to inflict bitter defeats on its enemies. Now, remember, by the way, nobody has seen this guy in public since he got his post, since he became, the supreme leader after his father died in Israel's opening barrage. So you have a statement from him. You have a statement from the IRG, and who knows what the guys on the shore with the shoulder missile launchers are saying. But the renewed standoff over the Strait came just hours after the Pakistani foreign minister Ishaq Dar said that his country was working to bridge the differences between U.S. and Iran, and they were setting up to expect a second round of negotiations starting this week. And Iran's Supreme National Security Council said new proposals from the U.S. have been put forward during a visit to Iran by Pakistan's army chief and were currently being reviewed, but that the Iranians were not ready for a new round of face-to-face talks because the Americans have not abandoned their maximalist position. That sounds a little different than what President Trump was telling us, don't you think? He's saying, we've made they've agreed to everything, no nukes, we get the Iranian dust, the uranium dust back, and that's why we can reopen the Strait. But according to the Supreme National Security Council leader, Iran will not hand over its stock of 970 pounds of enriched uranium to the U.S. He said the idea was a non-starter. And he did not address the other proposals for the enriched uranium, saying only that we are ready to address any concerns. So what was the president's response to this turnabout, this about face that Iran made? Well, the president said on Saturday that Iran got a little cute, but that very good conversations were happening and there would be more information to come, but that they could not blackmail us. That is the message that he is sending out, that they cannot blackmail us. Have you heard this before? Does the phrase, "Oh, good grief," come to mind when you think about this? Is this yet, Lucy puts the ball there and says, "Go ahead, Charlie Brown, kick it. I promise I won't pull it away again." And isn't that what Iran is doing over and over again with President Trump? Yeah, we agree to everything. And then, they pull the ball away again. So in regard to the president, I think there are some things to be had by talks with Iran, but when they have demonstrated over and over again that they cannot be trusted, is it worth negotiating with them? And like the Black Knight, will they ever admit defeat? I mean, isn't that the issue here? So if in fact we can't trust them to make an agreement, to hold to an agreement, or admit that they've been defeated, should we be looking at other solutions? Is it time for President Trump to put aside negotiations? Is it an exercise in futility to negotiate with Iran? I mean, we opened the Strait, they closed the Strait. We won't do nukes, we will do nukes. And on Saturday, speaking from the Oval Office, President Trump said that while his administration is having very good conversations with Tehran, he also said they can't blackmail us by attempting to close down the Strait just hours after agreeing to open that critical waterway. But while President Trump is saying, we're having good talks, at the same time, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Saeed Khatibzadeh said there was no date set for further peace negotiations, and saying that both sides have to agree to a framework before sitting down again. And he said that we hope that as soon as we can finalize the framework, then we can move on to the next step. He was in Turkey when he said that. They're refusing to go back to the table, even though the blockade has potential to seriously wound the Iranian economy. They may be forced to permanently shut down some of their oil wells because they are running out of storage space. And they can't pause crude oil production without seriously damaging extraction equipment. So that is part of the problem. And it remains to be seen how these Iranian attacks are going to impact the negotiations with Washington in the long run. But I'm also thinking that in the short run, they're going to impact things, because this is getting a little silly, don't you think? I mean, and add to this the fact that the ceasefire ends on Wednesday, day after tomorrow. So the question now becomes, what should happen? Should the ceasefire be extended? That's a reasonable question. The president was asked that when he was on Air Force One, and he says, I don't know. Cut 105, please, Mike.
If you don't have a deal by Wednesday when the ceasefire ends, will you extend the ceasefire or will
I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe I won't extend it.
Okay.
But the blockade is going to remain. But maybe I won't extend it. So you have a blockade, and unfortunately we'll have to start dropping bombs again. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. I think it's going to happen.
Still that note of optimism in the end. I think it's going to happen. Should we keep trying to negotiate with a worthless adversary who are untrustworthy and not willing to admit their own defeat, or should Tehran be turned into a parking lot with a blind eye to the world's horrified response to a bombing that will be, by its very nature, will have to include civilian casualties? What should we be doing here? That's what President Trump is thinking he might do, by the way. He says he might, in fact, bomb. He's warned Tehran that if it refuses to accept his deal that he keeps trying to put forward, the U.S. will, once again, start to bomb the country, including, this time, every single bridge and power plant, he says. In the past, he's been saying, no, we won't do that. We won't touch the infrastructure because it will take too long to rebuild, and we don't want them to, take 10, 20 years to get back into the 21st century. But in this particular case, he's done. And he accused Tehran of a total violation of the ceasefire agreement by attacking ships in the Strait of Hormuz on Saturday. But at the same time, he downplayed the impact of it, saying that ultimately Iran was helping the United States by driving ships towards America to purchase fuel. He said they're helping us without knowing it, and they're the ones that will lose with the closed passage. And I think that that's absolutely true. They are the ones that are going to lose with a closed passage. But it's still escalating. They're the Black Knight. It's escalating in the Strait. And yesterday, the president put a True Social post up. He says, today, an Iranian-flagged cargo ship named Tuska, nearly 900 feet long and weighing almost as much as an aircraft carrier, tried to get past our naval blockade, and it did not go well for them. The U.S. Navy guided missile destroyer USS Spruance intercepted the Tuska in the Gulf of Oman and gave them fair warning to stop. The Iranian crew refused to listen, so our Navy ship stopped them right in their tracks by blowing a hole in the engine room. Right now, U.S. Marines have custody of the vessel. The Tuska is under U.S. Treasury sanctions because of their prior history of illegal activity. He added, we have full custody of the ship, and we're seeing what's on board. So there, we're not only do we blow a hole in it, we have boarded it, which, okay, that's what he said we would do. This seizure, by the way, makes the first known forcible interdiction since the blockade went into effect. It's the first time. And the U.S. Central Command released video on Sunday confirming the encounter and showing repeated warnings that were issued over several hours, including an audio command ordering, vacate your engine room. We are prepared to subject you to destroying fire before the destroyer fired, into the vessel's engine compartment. They did exactly what they said they'd do. They, in fact, blew a hole in the ship. And this whole thing has stranded a lot of different ships, by the way. So you have stranded ships on both sides of the Strait of Hormuz, with Iran firing. And there was audio released by Maritime Monitoring Group, tanker trackers. And it appears to capture the moment a vessel and its crew came under fire while approaching the strait, including a distress call from one of the crew members. I just wanted you to hear a little bit of it. Cut 50, please, Mike.
Navy, motor tanker Sanmar Herald, Sepa Navy, you get me clearance to go. Sepa Navy, this is motor tanker Sanmar Herald, you get me clearance to go. My name second on your list. You get me clearance to go. You are fighting now. Let me turn back.
So he's pretty desperate as he gets fired upon. And that's what's happening out there. So the question is, what should the president do here? And I'm going to make this the poll question of the day, which you can take on X at the Kuhner Report, also at WRKO.com/Kuhner. It's brought to us by, I'm sorry, Mike, who is it brought to us by? Mario's Siding and Roofing. Thank you, Mario's, for sponsoring the Kuhner poll question. So the poll question is, what should the president do? Should he extend the ceasefire, or is it time to bomb Iran? No holds barred. That's the poll question of today. What do you think? Should we bomb, or should we extend the ceasefire and keep trying to negotiate with the Black Knight? Let's go to the calls. Rob in Maine. Welcome to WRKO. How are you, Rob?
Oh, hi, Sandy. Can you hear me all right
I can hear you just fine, Rob. So what do you think the president should do? Extend the ceasefire, or is it time to bomb Iran?
Well, I think we've done our share of, saturation bombing. I think we, the Israelis, they get that message, the mullahs. But there's still a lot of targets left. And I think the best thing to do now, given the fact that the decisions being made by those mullahs are being made by people that were either brought up in or heavily influenced by education in some of those schools that the Muslims have. So it's hard for them to think in any other direction. I think if a gradual approach, what you do is you say, okay, get rid of all the people in this mosque, and then they give them a day to do that, and then you go and you take the mosque down. Then you say, okay, had enough? No, okay, this power station, you get everybody out of the power station, and in a day we'll be back to pay you another visit. And I think that's the only way to deal with these people. There's precedent in history for this, too. If you look at Martin Luther, when he was fighting against the corruption in the Catholic Church, or the Crusades, and all this religious stuff that gets people fighting with each other, it's really hard to expect them to reason with any kind of reasonable approach to them. And it's even worse because the Muslims have the Quran, and in the Quran and in some of their other holy books, basically says, it's okay to take advantage of the infidels. It's okay to, those kinds of statements, And so these people, I think, are there's a minority that are against that thinking. And we've got a lot of them in L.A. There's a place called Little Tehran in L.A. with a lot of people that are really against that. And I think that's true in the country of Iran still. But the power still lies with the weapons out of the barrel of the gun. The power comes in Tehran now on the side of the mullahs. But I think gradual approach to taking a few power plants and a few mosques out can.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't think you take a few mosques out. I don't think you make mosques the target. This is Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Kuhner. Should the president continue to negotiate with Iran after they reneged within hours on opening the Strait of Hormuz? Should he extend the ceasefire past Wednesday? Is it, is this anything different going to happen? I mean, what is it they say? The axiom, crazy is doing the same thing over and over again and thinking you're going to get a different result. Is it crazy to continue negotiating with Iran? Or is it time to bomb the bridges, roads, and power plants, basically bombing them into an unequivocal submission? What should the president do in this case? Let's talk to John in Westford. John, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Oh, good. How are you?
I'm doing fine, sir. So what do you think the president should do?
Oh, I think he should keep doing what he's doing. He's deliberately dragging this out. He's playing the crazy man, which he does well. It's like Nixon's madman theory. He has the upcoming summit, the Trump G summit, And he's going in there showing Xi and the world that we control the world's oil, Venezuela, Iran, and I don't believe for a minute that Iran had control of the Straits. If you look at his Easter tweet, that didn't even seem like Trump. He's more or less screaming like a madman, "You crazy bastards, open that strait." They never had control of the strait. It's all theater, and I think he's going for regime change, and he's going to get it.
Well, I think there's already been a regime change to a certain extent. I mean, there is nobody that was left. We're like on a tertiary level now. That doesn't mean. I think the problem with regime change, as you put it, in Iran is that there's no regimes left. I think you're either you have these factions, as I was saying before, John, that are each one is vying for power, and so it's hard to hold anybody to anything because each one thinks, well, if they agree to that, then I'm not going to agree to that. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to take power. And I think that's what's happening. So the ability to negotiate, I think, is very ephemeral. I think it's kind of will-o'-the-wisp. You know what I mean? And so I think the only time there can be real regime change is if the people of Iran actually get up and say, okay, enough. We're either going to usher back in the Pahlavis as a royal family and have a democrat, monarchy like they do in England, or we're going to, vote in new people, forget the Pahlavis. I mean, but we're not even close to doing that. The bigger issue, I think, at the moment is that the ceasefire is Wednesday. So does the president extend the ceasefire, something he said he has not been willing to do, and continue talking to people who are untrustworthy and can never be held to what they agree to? Or does he bomb important infrastructure? I mean, doesn't he lend himself credibility by bombing the infrastructure? Don't you think, John?
Yeah, I don't think he needs to. I think these military generals, they have hundreds of millions of dollars offshore, and if you look at some of their kids are here in California.
They were until recently. Have you seen, John? Did you see the stories where a lot of them are being kicked out? I
know. Maybe we should keep them here and give them a place to escape to. Well, the rest of the family.
Okay.
But there's like the Shah's kid, the Ayatollah's kid, billions of dollars in London tied up. I mean, I feel like they're just trying to figure out a way to get them out and get the Persian people to set up a parliament, like you said.
So
maybe the old Shah's kid, I forgot his name, the family.
The Khomeinis? Oh, no, the Pahlavis. No, the Shah's kid. You're talking about the Pahlavis, yeah. Maybe, yeah. But the big issue is what happens Wednesday if you're Donald Trump, John? Do you say, all right, we're going to extend it because maybe we can do this peacefully? Or do you just send in the B-52s and go over that power plant and take it out?
Skip the power plant, go for some of the generals.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, as good as our B-52s are, I don't think that they can take out a single person walking down the street or hiding in a bunker. So I guess the big issue is, does he extend the ceasefire? It sounds to me like you think he should.
I don't know.
See,
I'm not president.
Isn't it? See, I'm telling you, this is a big question. This is not easy. This is not an easy question at all. Thank you for the call, John. I appreciate it very much. Yeah, if those of you want to take it online at our poll question, which is sponsored by Mario Siding and Roofing, it's on X at the Kuhner Report or at WRKO.com/Kuhner on our website. You can check it out there. What would you do if you had to make this horrible decision? John, who we just talked to, is not going there. Nobody elected him. He is not going to make that decision. The U.S. ceasefire is in effect right now. And President Trump has signaled that could change really quickly if Iran doesn't get its bleep together and start negotiating in good faith. And he said, that on Air Force One, in fact, I think I'll play it again, on Air Force One, that the clock is ticking and the blockade will stay in force. I think that's cut 105, Mike.
If you don't have a deal by Wednesday when the ceasefire ends, will you extend the ceasefire or will
I
you
don't
start
know.
active
Maybe not.
attacks again?
Maybe I won't extend it.
Okay.
But the blockade is going to remain. But maybe I won't extend it. So you have a blockade, and unfortunately we'll have to start dropping bombs again. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. I think it's going to happen.
So he's still optimistic. He thinks it's going to happen, meaning that they're going to reach a deal. I have no doubt, to be honest with you, that they can reach a deal. The issue is, will Iran abide by the deal? Because they haven't over and over again. And this president keeps, putting out optimistic posts, saying optimistic things to the press. I think he did post online, we had some pretty good news, but it seems to be going very well in the Middle East with Iran. We're going to be knowing very shortly. I expect things to go well. Many of these things have been negotiated and agreed to. And when he's asked what the news is, or when people, question what the news is, he's like, you'll hear about it. You'll hear what the news is. But is that sufficient? Just to say you're going to hear about it? This has been, I think, run as well as any particular battle or conflict could run if you're trying to disarm crazy people who have the capability of hurting the rest of the world. I mean, they did the military thing, and they're doing the economic thing too by blocking the straits. And it also appears that the U.S. military is preparing in coming days to board Iran-linked oil tankers and seize commercial ships that are in international waters. It's going to be basically a naval crackdown beyond the Middle East. I mean, we know that they boarded the one over the weekend and shot a hole in it. That was an Iranian ship, but General Kane, Raising Kane, appeared to talk about this a little bit this past week when he said that they're going to pursue Iranian ships in international waters and any ships trying to provide material support to Iran. And, they're talking about sanctioned and dark fleet vessels, which are trying to avoid legal restrictions. And that's going to increase the economic pressure, which is already massive on Iran to make those nuclear concessions. But, will Iran, in the words of the Black Knight, just call that a flesh wound? I mean, we're decimating their economy. We have bombed the crap out of them, excuse the language, and the economic stranglehold we have put on them is fierce and destroying their economy and indeed creating great hardships for the Iranian people. But will the regime just turn around and say, it's just a flesh wound, just like the Black Knight did in regard to all the economic pain we're giving them? And they're running out of time. The ceasefire ends Wednesday. So either they come across or they go back to getting bombed and earn even more harmful economic consequences. I don't know. Maybe China will start leaning on Iran to make a deal because, a lot of these ships that are getting stuck in the Strait of Hormuz are probably meant for China. And I think China doesn't want to have, their supply lines screwed around with anymore. Plus, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is also going after them with Operation Economic Fury by freezing accounts in neighboring countries. It appears that Iran's neighbors are more likely to be transparent about Iranian regime accounts because Iran bombed them. Remember? Funny how that works, but that's another example of how they're kind of crazy and out of control. So they bomb their neighbors where they have assets, by the way, and now it looks like, the U.S. is going to go after those. And Scott Bessent actually made that announcement from the White House press room podium. Cut number 6, please, if you would, Michael.
there was a letter that went to Oman and some other allies that suggested maybe the sanctions weren't the sanctions basically weren't having the effect that the United States wanted.
Yeah, I think that's not a correct characterization. Yesterday, we announced Operation Economic Fury, and we, for over a year, we have had maximum pressure on the Iranians, both on blocking payments into the Iranian state and going after the accounts of the IRGC. One of what may prove to be fatal mistakes that the Iranians made was bombing their GCC neighbors, and who are now willing to be much more transparent in terms of the funds or do a deeper dive in investigating the funds that are held within their banking systems. So we have pushed out to them the request that we want to freeze more funds of the leadership.
So that's going to hurt. You know, imagine that. You bomb them and now they're pissed at you. You know, I don't know. This is what I mean about Iran is crazy bastard, like King Arthur called the Black Knight at the bridge. And Besant thinks that this economic pressure is going to be even more effective than what he calls the kinetic pressure, which means the bombing. Cut 6A, please, Mike.
The other thing that we have done is we have told countries that if you are buying Iranian oil, that if Iranian money is sitting in your banks, we are now willing to apply secondary sanctions, which is a very stern measure. And the Iranians should know that this is going to be the financial equivalent of what we saw in the kinetic activities.
Is this an example of expanding the war economically as opposed to militarily? Is this another phase of that?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's exactly right. So if the Iranian regime, whatever left of it, whatever form that it takes, is sane, there's only one way out of this. But we're talking about Iranian splinter regimes, and so there's no guarantee that they're sane. And they keep stepping in it and picking the insane option over and over again. And they keep basically declaring that what has happened to them is just a flesh wound. So what should the president do? Should the president extend the ceasefire and continue to try to talk to these people? Or is it time to bomb the really important infrastructure like the bridges, like the power plants, like the major arteries? Celeste in New Hampshire, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Celeste?
Oh, good morning. Thanks for taking my call, Nancy. This is such a privilege. I was talking to the call screener, and I don't think it's a very good idea to blow those folks up. I really don't. It makes me really sad, as I'm sure it makes a lot of listeners sad. And I told the call screener that I really wish that President Trump would take a look at people who are going to American colleges who are from Iran. They might be grad students, or they might be undergrads, or they're here working. And there's a lot of Iranians who are really smart, and they're doing really good work here. But I think that they should all go home, and I think they should change their world back there. And we should say, hey, look, you guys can't be here. You just can't. It's a mess over there, and I don't think we should blow people up. But that's just my feeling.
Well, Celeste, I think a lot of people agree with you. I don't want to blow people up. I don't know anybody who wants to blow people up. President Trump has made it clear he doesn't want to blow people up. But what do you do when you have somebody or you have an entity like Iran who says, sure, we'll agree, they agree, they send the bottom line, and then within hours later say, bleep you. And not just once, they do this over and over again. And it's just like the Black Knight in Monty Python, who has his arms and legs severed and still says, bring it on. And, King Arthur's response is, what are you going to do, bleed on me? And the guy just, won't give up and calls him a lily-livered coward when he walks away. That's what Iran is doing. They are crazy. Not the people, not the Persian people, but the people who are in control, the regime that is in control, or whatever combination of people think they're the regime that are in control. They're crazy. What good does it do, Celeste, to negotiate with people who cannot be trusted to hold their word?
Well, I think your Monty Python example is quite clever. I thought that was good. But again, I think any Iranian here who isn't a citizen, I think they have to go home. I just think they have to go home.
Would you go home if you were an Iranian? Would you want to go home right now?
You got to make them. You got to make them. That's all. We're making other people go home. You have to make them go home. I'm sorry. And it's interesting. The Iranians who are here probably have, more than a couple of nickels in their pocket. They're wealthy people.
Well, Celeste, those Iranians, the ones that are tied to the current regime who are here, and there's a lot of them in California, they are being deported. They are being sent home. So those people are being sent home. But you just can't tell somebody who's come here legally, who is here legally, and who may be in the process of getting their green card, doing all that stuff, and who've done nothing wrong. You can't say you need to go home. People with ties to the regime, though, are being told to go home.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't quite understand why it's okay to blow up a bridge, but you can't tell somebody to go home to their their country of origin if they're not. I don't see that. You
don't see the difference between somebody who's here legally and who's not tied to the regime and making them go home to a war zone as opposed to blowing up infrastructure that will force a regime to deal with you?
No, I don't see the advantage in blowing up a country's infrastructure rather than telling people, hey, you know what, you got to go home.
Well, first of all, you don't have any guarantee that the people you're sending home are going to help you or hurt you when they go home, one. And two, in fact, you're just going to piss them off by sending them home, unless there is a particular reason to send them home. Like they're doing something, like there was a woman in a woman in L.A., who was purchasing drones and missiles on behalf of the IRG, and she's going home. And so, that's the kind of person that I agree with you. But somebody who's, a teacher at Caltech who's applied for, citizenship and who's working toward it, he has done nothing. And you want to send him into a war zone, into an area where, there's a chance he could be killed, and there's no guarantee he's going to help or hurt you. You just want to, you can't punish all the Iranian people for what some are doing. And he's here legally. So you want to change, in other words, you want to break the law to send these people home. If they're here illegally, or if they're assisting a country we're at war with, there is grounds to send them home. There is absolutely grounds, and that's legal. But just making somebody go home because they're Iranian, that's illegal. So that's one of the differences there. And two, President Trump is not trying to target civilians. He's trying to target infrastructure so that the war machine stops, whatever's left of it in Iran. That's the purpose of doing it, is to get rid of, the bridges, the power plants, and the main roads, so they can no longer manufacture anything that can be used against us. They can't manufacture other things too, and they're going to be dependent upon imports for quite some time if they can afford them afterwards. But that's the purpose of the infrastructure. The reason why he didn't do it before was to make it easy for them to rebuild, because he didn't want to hurt the Iranian people. He wanted to change the nuclear component of the arms race that Iran had found itself in. And so, he's tried to not hurt Iranian people, but it's war. And, and the Iranians have not shown us that same courtesy, by the way. In the Iranian regime, I should say, has not shown us that same courtesy in response, nor have they shown their neighbors as they, you have these crazy people just launching missiles at whatever they can. But I appreciate your call, Celeste, but I can definitely see the difference between illegally forcing people out of the country and bombing a bridge. I think, one is breaking our own laws here. Now, I know people say, well, President Trump is breaking the law with the war. I don't agree with that. I don't think he's broken any laws in regard to the war. And I think he has made a really good faith effort to negotiate with these people. But if they're not going to be held accountable to what they agree to, at what point do you stop? I guess that's the question. There is a deadline, day after tomorrow, Wednesday, that the ceasefire ends. So the question becomes, what do you do at that point? Do you extend it and and hope against hope that they're going to abide by what they say this time, even though they haven't over and over and over again? Or are you going to start taking out strategic infrastructure, like the bridges, like the power plants? You don't. An earlier caller said you take out the mosque. You don't take out the mosque. You don't target the religious. That's where civilians are. You don't do that. But you certainly can take out dual usage infrastructure. Dual usage means it can be used for civilians. It can also be used for the military. That's what dual usage is. And dual usage is one of the things that the world agrees are legitimate targets in a war. It's a legitimate target. A bridge is a dual usage thing. And every president, and I can go through the list in a little bit, but every president, going back, gosh, I don't know how far, I'll have to look at it, has gone after dual usage infrastructure in a country that we've had a conflict with. That includes Biden, I'm pretty sure. I know it included Obama and Clinton. President Trump has, this is Sandy Shack, by the way, sitting in for Jeff Kuhner, but President Trump has a big decision to make. Does he extend the ceasefire with Iran after it expires on Wednesday, after they've broken their word over and over again? Most recently, firing on ships in the Strait of Hormuz hours after agreeing to make sure that it was open again. Can you negotiate with crazy people? I mean, that I guess is what it comes down to. President Trump has said that the United States is offering Iran a very fair and reasonable deal that includes them handing over their stockpiles of enriched uranium. And so far, Tehran has refused to consider that. And then what the president posted this weekend is, I hope they take it, because if they don't, the U.S. is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran. No more Mr. Nice Guy, all in caps with an exclamation point. They'll come down fast, they'll come down easy, and if they don't take the deal, it will be my honor to do what has to be done, which should have been done to Iran by other presidents for the last 47 years. That's what he wrote in regard to the prospective peace deal. He says it's time for the Iranian killing machine to end. Now, there have been previous threats of targeting Iran's infrastructure. And those, remember, we're going to bomb you into submission. And remember the Easter tweet, one of our earlier callers referenced it. But it remains to be seen whether they will take President Trump seriously this time and take his threats seriously. I think they should, because this president seems to follow through when he says that he makes a mistake, when he draws the line. But I don't know if they will or not. And so the question is, should the president even bother? Should he extend the ceasefire, or should he just start going after the infrastructure on Wednesday? What do you think, Rob, in North Andover?
Good morning, Sandy. Thank you. How are you?
I am fine, sir. So what do you think the president should do in this very difficult situation?
Another great show, thanks. Listen, it's gone 8 weeks too long. I am I'm in the top 10 of Trump fans, but he's really letting me down. And, you just talked about him drawing a line. He used to. Very disappointed. I'm telling you, I'm very disappointed in him. This thing needs to end. Financially, we're getting trashed over here. He's caused the prices to rise. And now, his word used to mean something, and it doesn't anymore to me. And I'm a big Trump fan. And, how can we believe these people? They've been lying to us for 50 years. It's time to end this. I hate to see anyone die, but it's time to end this. And midterm time, boy, this thing is going to be all blue in November. And that isn't why I'm saying this. Mm-hmm. This thing has to end. I don't believe them. And just go in, get the job done that should have been done years ago by all these presidents that let it go. But you know what? Now he's letting it go. And just real disappointed.
Is he, though? I mean, he says, there is a ceasefire till Wednesday. And they only got the ceasefire because he said, I'm done and I'm going to blow you up. And they said, okay, let's go to the ceasefire. We can talk. So you have a 2-week period of time for them to demonstrate their willingness to negotiate and to follow through with what they agreed to. And they haven't. They've, within hours of the Strait being open on Friday, they started bombing or shooting at Indian ships and some other ships. And then we had a confrontation with an Iranian ship. We blew a hole in it on Sunday, and then we boarded it. As President Trump said, we're checking out to see what's on there. But if he bombs them, he says he's just going to go after the bridges and the power plants. So basically, that will, and I would think major arteries as well. So that will basically stop. Their economy is already in a stranglehold, and I think that will simply destroy the economy and create a great deal of hardship for the Iranian people. But I'm not sure that it's going to really kill a lot of Iranian people, which I think is a good thing. But don't you think, in what you were saying about the midterms, Rob, the reason why he keeps going back to the peace table is probably because he has an eye to the midterms and thinking that more people, like my earlier caller that we talked to, the woman from New Hampshire, Celeste from New Hampshire, who said basically that she would prefer to deporting people. She prefers, obviously, words to bombs. And so do you think he's really giving it every effort that he has to make words be the effective way to end the Iran war, to bring those people on board? Because he can always drop a bomb, right? So whenever he can always do that, but you can't always go back to the negotiating table. Do you think that figures into it at all? Rob?
I think it's time.
You think it's time?
I don't.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. I'm sorry, I do.
So you're like me when you look at Iran as the Black Knight, saying, okay, we've destroyed you, and they still won't say, sure, here's the uranium. And,
exactly.
And it's like, okay, so what hope do you have? In the example that I used from Monty Python, it doesn't matter what you do. He will never, ever, ever concede defeat. So do you think that that's an apt analogy for Iran? Do you think there's a hope that they will ever concede defeat?
No. And it's just time. I'm sorry, Sandy. It's just time to end this.
You don't have to apologize.
It's causing a lot of hardship over here.
Yeah.
It's causing a lot of hardship over here.
It is.
Why should we suffer? I don't trust them. I don't believe them. When you're negotiating with someone you don't trust and believe, you're wasting your time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do not disagree with that. I'm a big believer in that whole give peace a chance thing. In other words, if you can negotiate, I think you do negotiate if there's a way to do it. But I don't see the way forward with that here. No matter, they'll agree to anything to get past the next 12 hours. And then the next 12 hours after that, they completely revert to whatever their position was before.
Now stand aside, worthy adversary. 'Tis but a scratch. A scratch? Your arm's off. No, it isn't. Well, what's that then? I've heard worse. You liar. Come on, you pansy. You're indeed brave tonight, but the fight is mine.
Oh, had enough, eh?
Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left.
Yes, I have.
Look.
Just a flesh wound.
What are you going to do, bleed on me?
I'm invincible.
You're a loony.
The Black Knight always triumphs.
Come, Patsy.
Oh, I see. Running away, eh? You yellow bastards! Come back here and take what's coming to you!
The Black Knight from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, who won't admit defeat. Does this remind you of Iran, perchance? Just wondering. 617-266-6868 is the number here. 617-266-6868. This is Sandy Shack from the Kuhner Report. The ceasefire ends Wednesday, and after Iran, who has been thoroughly trounced, but won't admit defeat, demonstrated this weekend that they can't be trusted after they fired on ships in the Strait of Hormuz, after agreeing to it being open. should President Trump extend the ceasefire that's about to end, or should he go to option B, which is bombing bridges and power plants? What do you think? Let's go to Adrian in New Mexico. Adrian, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Oh, good morning.
Good morning. So what do you think? What do you think?
Well, Sandy, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I was under the impression that when this most recent ceasefire was put out on the table, I was under the impression that the Israelis were supposed to stop doing their bombing raids in southern Lebanon.
Mm-hmm.
And that has not happened. So I'm under the impression that the Israelis were actually the one who broke the ceasefire.
Well, my understanding is that there was some confusion regarding Lebanon, but that has ended. They have, in fact, worked out a deal for Lebanon. So, no, and that's something separate from what we're talking about.
Well, my understanding was that was one of the conditions for the ceasefire.
Yeah, and they've worked that out, and they have had a meeting of the minds on between Israel and Lebanon. So that is no longer a part of the equation.
So I'm one of those people that I never agreed. I always thought that this war, that President Trump allowing himself in the United States to be dragged into this war by Israel, I always thought that was a huge mistake.
Mm-hmm.
President Trump was elected on not, getting America involved in more foreign wars. And quite frankly, he really hasn't stuck to a lot of the promises that he made, part of the 47 agenda.
Well, I don't think he was elected, Adrian, on a no war platform. I think he was more elected. I mean, he's always tried to be the president of peace, and he has certainly ended, I think, 8. At last count, officially 8 confrontations. So I think he does have bona fides in that area, but I think he was elected more for the border and the economy. Now, the border he's done a smashingly good job on. The economy was doing well until the Iran conflict, and it looks like it will probably, once the Strait is open and this ends, the economy will bounce back because the fuel oil, which really controls inflation and most prices and most consumer goods, will fall. It's already fallen recently to begin with, and it will come back pretty quickly. If you know anything about economics, basically, it will come back. It may take months or it could take a year, but it will come back. So I think that that's a misstatement that he was elected on an anti-war platform. He wasn't. But that being said, were you never concerned about the fact that Iran had a nuclear weapon? And you're saying to me that if President Trump discovers that they are closer to having a nuclear weapon than we thought they were, and that in fact it could probably come within his presidency and no longer, that he should not have responded to that? Are you saying that you would have preferred if he had ignored that, Adrian?
Well, the truth of the matter is Iran has never been a direct threat to the United States. Now, ever since 1979, Iran has certainly been a nuisance to the United States, but they have never been a direct threat.
You don't think having a nuclear missile makes them a direct threat?
Not to the United States. I think Iran.
Oh, so we should let them build a nuclear. So as long as they take out England, that's okay?
No. I'm saying that they were never a direct threat to the United States.
I heard you when you said that. What I'm saying is that what we need to focus on? If they can only take out our bases in Europe, then it's okay. Or if they can only take out France and Italy, then it's fine because they're not a direct threat. We shouldn't do anything about it.
I don't think Iran was going to be doing those things.
Why? What are you basing that on?
But what I also want to get back to is President Trump ran on a not getting involved in foreign wars.
Yeah, but let's go back to what you were saying before about they're not a direct threat. What are you basing that on? You're saying, I don't believe that they had the ability that they were going to be able to build a nuclear weapon. What makes you say that? Because we've seen evidence that they were, in fact, enriching uranium, and they had a pretty good missile program that was developing long-range ballistic missiles, which can carry a nuclear weapon. So what makes you think that they weren't developing that? Because we've seen the evidence that they were. What have I missed is what I'm asking you, Adrian.
I don't know if there was actual evidence or not. The unfortunate thing is that there's so much propaganda and misinformation that's being reported by the media.
Okay.
In many cases, we don't really know what's what.
Well, Adrian, let me ask you a question. Who did you vote for in the last election?
I voted for President Trump.
I don't believe you, because this is, I don't believe that's true, because the people who generally, vote for President Trump and who support his platform make an effort to find out things before they make blanket statements on the air. And so you're telling me there was no evidence. You say, I don't know of any evidence that Iran had nuclear capabilities, when we've seen evidence of it. So apparently you just dreamed it, and so think that it must be true because you don't want it to be true. That's a fantasist. It's not somebody who's grounded in reality, and those are the people that generally vote for President Trump. And that may sound really harsh, and I don't mean to stifle discussion, but you don't come across to me as somebody who has done a great deal of research before you do make blanket statements that have no basis in fact. I mean, basically, I asked you a question and you didn't answer it before, which was, President Trump discovers after getting in office, after trying to be the president of peace and being involved in the secession of, 8 wars, and discovers that when they look at the actual data coming in and the intel, that in fact Iran was a lot closer to having nuclear weapons than we had thought they were, mostly because they were aided by past administrations in the United States, along with China and some others. And so he had to do something about it. I don't think Trump woke up and say, oh, goody, I get to go to war with Iran today. He is not a war hawk. He's never been a war hawk, and he's done his best to avoid wars. So, and when I say to you, well, isn't that a good enough threat once you find out that's happened? And your response is there's no threat. But there was. We saw that there was. We saw that how far they had progressed in their missile program. We saw how far they had progressed with enriching uranium. And that's why the B-52s went out. And then that started the whole thing, obviously. We were hoping for people to wake up and say, okay, Iran was a danger. Trump has minimized it, but it could come back. And, and you still don't want to, you still keep repeating things that you have no basis for. You're not giving me examples of things other than you just keep making the same blanket statements over again. So I can't take you seriously. So I'm just saying, go ahead, say that, promote that. But get a little scientific basis or actual proof of what you're saying, and not just that you feel like it, because it makes you less credible when all you can do is say, well, I don't think so. Okay, look it up first, because I do look things up. And I hear the clock ticking on the wall, tick, 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 ticking down to the end of the ceasefire. And what happens then? Does President Trump extend it? Or does it become bridge and power plant day in Iran? As, the president sends the B-52s over to take out dual purpose infrastructure. What do you think should happen? Let's go to Peter in Worcester. Peter, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Morning. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome. So what do you think the president should do on Wednesday?
Well, I think, this is what I think. First of all, I want to say something about the last caller, and I thought his statement that they were a nuisance. I wonder if all the servicemen and women that have been killed going back to Beirut, Kobar Towers, all the people coming back maimed, coming back without legs and arms, I wonder if their family members think it was a nuisance. Because you know what?
That is a wonderful point, and I'm embarrassed that I did not make it myself, Peter. Thank you for that.
I know I love listening to you because you're a very well read person, and you don't say things unless you know what you're talking about. And this current regime over in Iran has been getting away with absolute murder for 47 years. They've been kicking the can down the road. They're as evil as the Nazi regime back in World War II. They have to be stopped. And no more ceasefires. It's an inconvenience. And you know why? Americans are very impatient people. They want everything instantaneous because their gas went up $1. And I don't know what to say. I have grown children this is what I believe is wrong with America. Americans don't know history. They don't read. They're not being taught history anymore. The hardships of World War II in regards to rationing, not being able to get rubber tires and everything, we did it for 4 years. We're only 8 weeks into this. These people that, well, we got to do this, we got to do, they can suck it up a little bit. Iran has been meddling around the world for years. They've been destabilizing the Middle East. If you allow them get a weapon of mass destruction, it's going to set a whole event. Saudi Arabia is not going to sit by because they're going to want to get their own nuclear weapon. We can't have any more proliferation of nuclear weapons. This has got to end, and it's got to end now.
It's interesting that you say that, Peter, because one of the things I guess that I just really responded to viscerally with the last caller, Adrian from New Mexico, was the fact that he seemed to be under the impression that as long as their missiles can't reach us in the United States, that it's okay. And I'm thinking, well, first of all, there are Americans all over the world. We have military bases all over the world. You don't think those would be targeted and those would be American lives lost? And one, and two, what about our allies and all the other innocent people? So it's okay to let them burn in a nuclear holocaust? I mean, I guess I just responded so viscerally to that I wasn't really ready to listen to anything else he had to say because I found that so cold-hearted and out of touch and selfish, just because, and there is no guarantee, by the way, that those missiles couldn't reach here at some point, depending on how much help they had from countries that do have very long range missiles, like China, like North Korea. So I think that I think that's what I was responding to more than anything else is that nuclear threat you were just talking about.
Need any more. It's bad enough that the former Soviet Union, Russia, China, North Korea, we don't need any more nuclear weapons on the planet. It's amazing. I'm amazed that there hasn't been something happen by accident or whatever. We've been, 80 years with nuclear weapons, and the last thing we need to have is somebody like the Iranians, the regime that they have, that have nuclear weapons. It can't be allowed. I'm sorry. It can't be allowed. Thank God we get Donald Trump in there because I watched the last two presidents. They basically enabled Iran to basically get closer and closer and closer to perfecting missiles and perfecting a nuclear weapon by giving them cash, by basically giving them everything, kick the can down the road. Hey, Americans got to wake up. This is it. All right, it's got to be done.
Peter, are you saying no extension of the ceasefire on Wednesday? It's time for the president to have Bridge Day.
More ceasefires because these people are going to lie. We don't even know who we're dealing with over there right now. There's been so many, so many people killed, and I don't know who's running the show over there. I don't think that the communications over there. They say one thing, they do the other, and everything like that. It's time to basically close the case. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon because, number one, it would destabilize the Middle East. Everybody in the Middle East would want to have a nuclear. Saudi Arabia has already come out. If they've said in the past that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, then they would be forced to get a nuclear weapon. Do we really want to have nuclear weapons proliferation in an area that's like a powder keg? Right now, no way. Let Donald Trump finish the job. And you know what? I said this to Americans: read your history and suck it up. It's been 8 weeks, and I'm going to tell you right now. You know what? You can pay $1 more for gas and tighten your belt. You'll be all right. The prices will come down, but we got to finish this job, and we got to finish it now.
Well, that's very well said, Peter. Thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it. And I thought you stated your position extremely well. And I think there are a lot of people, some of whom called this morning, completely agree with you that it's useless to negotiate with Iran. I'm of two minds. I'm very ambivalent about it. I think it's very difficult to negotiate with people that are untrustworthy, that don't keep their word. But you do want to make every effort that you can to minimize, loss of life, and that's one way that you do that. But what happens when the other side is faithless, basically, or won't admit defeat while they're gushing from, severed limbs, like the Black Knight? So what do you do? It's a very knotty question, and like an earlier caller who said, I don't know because I wasn't, he basically said I didn't run for president. And I kind of feel the same way. I didn't run for president. So I can see both sides of the issue. I don't know when the rubber hits the road what I would do in this particular case. And I respect both sides of the issue, but I'm starting to lean more and more toward it's time to put President Trump's money where his mouth is. What do you think? Let's go to Jack in New Hampshire. What do you think the president should do, Jack?
Hi, Sandy. How you doing?
I'm fine, sir. So do you think President Trump should extend the ceasefire, or is it time to send the B-52s?
The way, from what I've been hearing about the culture of the mullahs, we're going back, Persia, 2,000 years. I mean, all they've ever known is war and destruction and death. And, how many times does Trump have to say, okay, listen, let's go to the table, let's work this out? And it seems that by their own actions, it's not going to happen. I think it's inevitable that it's going to become bridge and power plant destruction time very soon. And I'd hate to see that because I don't want to see the Iranian people get hurt.
Yeah.
But the mullahs need to be taken out. And, I got to say this. That guy, Adrian, that you had on the line, and I say this to all of Kuhner country that resemble his dialogue. I can't say this enough. I'm not, I don't think I'm so, a scholar in all of, the world history and everything, but I would like to use a lot of common sense, and I try to put, first things first, Trump is a great president. Probably kind of go down as one of the greatest presidents we've ever had in history. And the guy's doing everything he can to protect us. Now, as far as the missile situation, I heard that I think I heard that Iran had medium-range ballistic missiles.
Yeah.
Okay, they may not strike the United States, but they're working very hard to get long-range intercontinental ballistic ICBMs.
Yep.
Okay, and that's not new news. I mean, that's something that they've wanted to do. I mean, they've said that the United States is the great Satan and that Israel is the little Satan, and in death to both of us. So what makes Adrian think that there's no urgency? There is urgency. I mean, if our president is hearing that an enemy of ours is working on getting a missile that could strike mainland United States and take out us, I think that warrants urgency, and he needs to do what he needs to do.
I agree with you, Jack. And also, to my earlier point, I think that it's not just that do their missiles reach the continental United States, they can certainly reach U.S. military bases in other parts of the world and U.S. protectorates, basically, as well as some of our European allies. And do those lives mean nothing? So, I mean, are we supposed to just ignore that? And then if you are that cold and calculating that it doesn't matter unless you're an American, then what about the fallout from having nuclear weapons explode in Europe? Don't you think that's eventually going to affect us on a health level? If not, just the fact that all trade will stop, the global economy will disappear. There's all sorts of horrific responses to that, even if there's no long-range missile that can hit the U.S. And as your point, they're working on it. So it's only a matter of time until they get to the point where they could directly affect us. And then let's not forget that they also are one of the huge terrorist sponsorships, in the world, and that they support terror actions here in the United States. So they actually have gotten us here. They are a direct threat to us. So I think you have to be careful. Adrian has to be careful what he thinks of as a direct threat. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jack. Go ahead.
No, I want to give this out to Kuhner country, too. I think what Jeff Kuhner was saying about the best, audience in the business, I agree with that. But I want to put something out there that's very powerful. Patience is a virtue. Patience is a virtue. What does that mean? Have some hope, have some faith in our president, our commander-in-chief. He's doing the very best job he can. And all of us can't say that we walk in his shoes and know everything that he's dealing with. My God, the guy probably never sleeps. Yeah. He's always on something. He's trying to protect us. He's trying to make America first. I mean, he's doing so many things, and everyone is just losing their minds because they're not patient. They're not just taking a deep breath and recognizing, hey, let's just let the dust settle, let our president do what he needs to do, and eventually all the goals that he's put forth will come to fruition. I really believe that.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jack. I agree with you. Patience is what is required here. I know that people say, well, he said he would lower the prices from day one. Well, being somebody who has a degree in economics, I can tell you it takes more than 24 hours to start affecting the economy. It usually takes a year to 2 years. And he did start that. And prices were going down. And affordable housing. There's also, he's working on the interest rates. He's got to deal with the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, in order to deal with that. But he's been working on it, and it was successful. And things bounced up a little bit here with the Iran conflict, but they will go back down again, and in pretty short order as the price of oil goes back down, because oil is really one of the things that controls inflation and consumer good prices for manufacturing and for transportation. So I think your words to the wise are terrific and are absolutely spot on. We need to have a little patience. And the question that we have right now, though, Jack, is should President Trump show more patience with the Iranians and give them an extended ceasefire, or do we just have, bridge and power plant obliteration day? Which way do you hope he goes?
Well, I would like to see peace, obviously, but their behavior depicts their ultimate, goal. There's so much hate involved. Yeah. I don't think a diplomatic solution is going to be victorious. I don't feel that. I'd like to see that, but
I think we all would. Happen. Yeah, I agree with you, Jack. I think we all would like to see that, but I think the Iranian regime has shown over and over again that they're duplicitous and they can't be trusted. Thank you for the call, Jack. I appreciate it very much. Let's go to Nick in Weymouth. Nick, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Fine, Sandy. How are you?
I'm fine. What do you think the president should do on Wednesday?
Well, you can walk into any classroom, primarily in the earlier levels, elementary schools. You'll see a globe in the room, right? You'll see some history books in the room. Those are facts, okay? So there's facts and conjecture. They demonstrated, the Muslims, they have demonstrated for 14 centuries what they actually are. It has not changed, right? The lies are part of their portfolio, okay? Trump comes out and make a statement, and then the very next day, based on what they had agreed to the day before, and they come out with lies in the press to make him look like he doesn't know what's going on. That's not what it is. They are what they are. They demonstrated they could reach a air base in the Indian Ocean about 4,400 miles away from whence they shot those missiles. Okay, if you go to the west of Iran, there's the east coast of the United States, a little bit farther than Western Europe, by the way, of course. Mm-hmm. But that's 4,400 miles to go down in the Indian Ocean. You need to double that to get to the east coast of the United States. If you look to the east of in the other direction, it's the same thing to the west coast. It won't be long before they have the missile technology, which they've gotten from China and Russia. And by the way, that was the Clinton administration through 8 aerospace industries who got caught and was slapped on the wrist by the Bush administration for giving up telemetry, right, missile technology to China. Okay, so they exported that to them. And, of course, they perfected what they can. That's there. So what has to be dealt with is, well, what are they going to do? You're going to do what you can do. You can't depend on the UN. You can't depend on NATO. Why? Because they happen to be about, half the distance to the United States. Okay? So they're well in range of missiles that they currently have.
Yeah.
Right? So they have to be dealt with what they are as gangsters. That was the Japanese starting in the late 20s in China. Okay, and then working their way to World War II, and that was the Germans in World War II, right? They were the gangsters of their time. So the only way to deal with them is you have to proliferate your own arms as a threat, right, to show what we are capable of doing. And China and Russia have, what has Russia already been through? They have already been through what China is going to face probably within the next 10 to 15 years. They will not be able to feed their people, okay? And that begets problems. That's why the USSR disappeared, okay? But that won't be in our time. That will happen. So we can only become militarily very strong. And I'm sorry, but when you come to the United States and you happen to have your own religion, well, when you practice things that are actually against federal laws and state laws, you have to be prosecuted, or maybe they don't allow you in. You take an oath to become a citizen of the United States. An oath to them means nothing. I guess that's all I have to say, Sandy.
Well, I appreciate that, Nick, and I'm happy that you brought up, I thought you stated your position very well. You brought up NATO, and it just made me think it was really funny because on Friday, Macron, who has not exactly been the most helpful in regard to reopening the Strait or in what we had to do in regard to Iran, made a statement. He said, "We all demand the full, immediate, and unconditional reopening of the Strait of Hormuz by all parties." And he's talking on behalf of himself and Keir Starmer. And I was like, well, what the hell? You're making demands now. And President Trump responded to this with a post from Truth Social. He says, and this, again, is when, during the 12 hours that the Strait was open before Iran reneged, said, "Now that the Hormuz Strait situation is over, I received a call from NATO asking if we would need some help. I told them to stay away unless they just want to load up their ships." This is the thing. The NATO countries are the countries that were at most danger, that were at ground zero, basically. And what did they do to help? They did nothing to help, really, and deal with the problem. And that kind of, hanging out and let's see what happens, que sera, sera approach is what brought us to the point where Iran had medium-range missiles, was working on long-range missiles, and was enriching uranium. That attitude brought us to this point where it was either act now or we would never be able to act. And that attitude still exists there. And it also apparently exists in New Mexico with our earlier caller, Adrian. I think that President Trump was right to try to sever the danger from Iran, and could have done it through diplomatic means if the Iranians would keep their word. But they didn't. And so now we're in another crisis situation. On Wednesday, the ceasefire ends. So does he try again? Does he try again and hope to have a different result this time? Do you think it's possible to have a different result? Because the past diplomatic forays have caused us to say, okay, the war is over, or we're really close, and then bang, the Iranians say, not so fast. Wait a minute. And I think there's multiple reasons for that, Nick. I think one of the reasons is that I think that there is a cultural disconnect going on between the hardline people who are in charge and what they view as legitimate negotiation. And I also think that there's a problem with identifying who the correct people are, because many layers of leadership have been killed in the bombings. And so I'm not sure if you can identify these factions that are vying for power over there, and they don't know what to do. And I think that's part of the problem with negotiations. So the question is, do we try, or do we just call an end to it? And so far, I think it's about half and half, what I'm hearing from people. Thank you for the call, Nick. I appreciate it very much. Let's go to Anthony in Plainville. Anthony, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
I'm great, Sandy. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
And what do you think, sir?
First of all, I want to premise it by saying Donald Trump is the most consistent person on Iran, not just as a political figure, but even before then. When in 1980, he had an interview with Rona Barrett. You might remember this. It was about the Iran hostage crisis. And Donald Trump, even back then, said that he would suggest potentially taking military action against Iran for a peace through strength type of power. And back then, he was 34 years old. He's been consistent all the way through from his first term till today. And here's what I think people are missing. Iran, and people have heard this before, but I tend to believe it, is the number one, or was the number one, state sponsor of terror. And that means with a ballistic missile, with nuclear weapons, they will absolutely use that or have the fear of using that. And if you look at the timeline, Donald Trump has extended an olive branch to Iran many, many times. I mean, going back almost a year ago today when they held the second round of talks.
I'm sorry, Anthony, hang on. The Iran ceasefire ends Wednesday. Do you think we should give peace another chance, again? Or should President Trump send in the bomb squad? We were speaking with Anthony in Plainville before the break, who was pointing out to everybody who'd forgotten that Iran is the number one state sponsor of terrorism in the world. And don't you think that they will look for every opportunity to use it? Anthony, I'm sorry we got cut off. Please continue.
Yeah, not a problem at all. Not only are they the number one state sponsor of terror, but before the break, I was just noting that there have been many times where President Trump has extended the olive branch to Iran, peace talks and letters, and there comes a time where the peace talks, the talking has to end. And when you look at kind of the campaign that has been held against Iran over the last month or two, it's been the cleanest, the most surgical, one-sided military operation in American history. And it really is, I really do believe in President Trump's judgment. I believe that he is looking for a way to have this come to a close without any more violence. But at the end of the day, this is a two-sided campaign. If you're trying to negotiate with irrational, erratic people, you got to go peace through strength, because that's what they know.
No, that's right. I agree with you. Peace through strength that's one of the things that Ronald Reagan, I think, made Ronald Reagan a successful president, was that theory, working under that theory in his presidency. I think President Trump has been trying to emulate that, or it's just him, because that's who he is, that he believes in peace through strength or in negotiating from a position of strength. And I think he's given it a good shot, Anthony. I think you're absolutely right in that he has tried over and over again to avoid any kind of military excursion. Because he has settled a lot of wars. I mean, the left, the mainstream media, make fun of that all the time. I saw a headline in I think it was Mediaite, which is a left wing website, who they're saying Trump claims to have ended 10 wars, one of which he started himself. It's like, okay, but here's the thing: he's ended how many wars? And Biden ended what? 0, and basically started some, and Obama ended, I'm sorry, how many again? So it's he's ended conflicts around the world. And in this particular case, he was being proactive with Iran because they were a threat to Europe, and they were becoming a bigger and bigger threat to us. And so that was why he responded the way he did. But he tried to negotiate with them first, Anthony. And as you pointed out, and you just can't do it with some people. And in this particular case, you have people who won't admit defeat. You would have people who cannot be trusted to keep their word. So how do you negotiate with that? So what do you think is going to happen on Wednesday, Anthony?
Things could change. I mean, 24 hours could change. But all I know is this, Sandy, I'll leave you with this. Any country with a nuclear capability that consistently over a period of years and years says death to Israel, death to America, death, you got to handle him with strength. And I believe in Trump. He's the finest commander-in-chief of my lifetime, and I trust his judgment.
That doesn't tell me which way you think it's going to go on Wednesday, though.
Like I said, there's things that could change. But you know what? I think, God willing, we don't need to go down that route. But if we do, I think our military is the best.
So are you, Anthony, I'm going to put your feet to the fire. So are you saying the president should stop negotiating and bomb, or are you saying he should extend the ceasefire? You got two options there. Things could change is not one of those options. So which one of those are you picking?
You're right. If it was one of those two options, I would say stop talking and take action.
You know, it's it's not easily said, is it? People who have been supported, it's time to respond militarily. It is not an easy decision to make. I can only and this is just on a talk show. I can imagine the kind of weight that President Trump is under. I mean, my mind can't even wrap around it for him to actually make that decision. Because just in talking about it, it's difficult to reach a consensus. So God bless the man. It's got to be. This is why presidents age so much in office, Anthony. They just, they just start graying within a few weeks of taking the oath. Thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it very much. Let's go to Tom in New Hampshire. Tom, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Hi, good to be on. Yes, I mean, like I say, I'm more in line with your previous caller, Adrian. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't see the reason for going to war with Iran. I haven't seen convincing proof that they were developing nuclear weapons. And this is...
The enriched uranium didn't do it for you?
No, well, I trust the IAEA, and I trust the CIA and our Department of State, all of which concluded prior to this that Iran was, at most, if they conclude that if they started developing a nuclear weapon today, it would take 4 years for them to achieve that level of enrichment. So I trust all these agencies that had previously concluded that this was not something that was going to happen. And even the, statements from the Iranian government itself.
You trust the Iranian government itself?
Yes. The previous Ayatollah Ali Khomeini had declared a fatwa.
I'm sorry, I'm not cutting you off, Tom. Hang on, because we're going into another fixed break. So I'm going to come back to you because I want you to make sure you can finish your point. And an extended ceasefire or sending in the military to bomb dual-purpose infrastructure in Iran. That's the decision that President Trump is now faced with as the Wednesday deadline gets near. Now, before the break, we were speaking with Tom in New Hampshire, who says that according to intelligence reports, Iran was 4 years away from being able to do anything that was threatening. And so he doesn't understand why the president felt it necessary to go in and bomb Iran. And I wanted to give you time to finish your point, Tom, before I responded to it. So feel free. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess my point is not only are they according to the intelligence from the UN, the U.S. They're not only are they 4 years away, but there's no political will to develop nuclear weapons. The Ayatollah had put a fatwa, which is to say a formal ban religious, they are haram. Nuclear weapons are considered haram under the Ayatollah's interpretation of Islam. That they are, monstrous weapons that no nation should create.
If they're considered haram, why won't they agree to no nukes then?
Well, they are allowed to have a civilian nuclear energy program.
Yes, but that's not what they were doing. They weren't doing a civilian nuclear program.
That is what they were doing.
Okay,
that's the thing.
This is because I don't know where you're getting this information from. I just can't keep it to myself anymore. So, I don't know what websites you're reading or what blogs you're on that are telling you that the CIA said they were 4 years away. Okay. A couple days before, or a week or so before, President Trump launched Operation Midnight Hammer, which sent the B-52s in to take out the nuclear stuff, there was an intelligence summary done by all of our agencies. This is last spring, CIA, and along with the British, the M6, and all of a huge intelligence summary was issued for the military Joint Chiefs of Staff. And you know what they found? They found that Iran could build a nuclear device in months, months, months. So, and that's months, not 4 years, but in months. And that is why they responded. Now, if you don't believe me, because, what I'm saying to you is if you want to look at mainstream media sources for this, go to freaking CBS News because they put it out there. And CBS News is not exactly Trump friendly. And yet they were forced to admit that that's what our intelligence, along with some of our allies' intelligence, were telling the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that it was months away, not years, but months. So I don't know where you're getting your information, but it's like somebody woke up and said, I wish that it was this, so that's what it must be. Basically, as of last spring, intelligence assessments indicated that they were close to having enough highly enriched uranium to produce multiple nuclear bombs, with some reports suggesting they possessed enough material for about 10 nuclear warheads. Well, the U.S. and Israel have now destroyed those capabilities together, after they bombed Natanz and Fordow. But the problem is that even after that, Iran had retained key technical capabilities, with some assessments suggesting that they could reach weapon-grade material within weeks if they chose to proceed. There is hard data for what I am telling you. This is not a fantastical report written under the Biden administration or the Obama administration, who wanted no interference with Iran whatsoever. This is stuff that started coming out before Biden left office, which he kept under the wraps, and which came out in the spring after President Trump was in office, basically showing that, in fact, they did have nuclear capabilities. It was missile related, not civilian power related, and that they were months away from building nuclear warheads. And again, if you don't believe me, Google what I am telling you and look for the mainstream sources that don't like Trump. And they're still going to tell you the truth about this, Tom.
The thing is, you can go back to the 1990s, finding statements from Netanyahu.
I'm not
or
going
other...
back to 1990. I'm talking about this past year. This past year, Tom. I don't care what their capabilities were in 1979 when there was a revolution. I don't care what their capabilities were 30 years ago or 20 years ago. I'm talking about now. What put us in danger now? And that is what President Trump responded to with Midnight Hammer and the new one, whatever it is, Epic Fury or whatever the hell it is now. So, I mean, we're talking about not what historically Iran has done for the past 40 years, which has been to thumb their nose at us and send terrorists, by the way. But now, they were capable now of building a missile with nuclear warheads. And they had enough enriched uranium to do it. There were no, civilian nuclear plants. They didn't bomb. Fordow was not a nuclear civilian plant. We have the proof of what it was. And I understand that this is really scary and that you don't want it to be true. But what remains, Tom, is that it is true. And even our press, who hates Trump and who basically don't support anything he does, including the Iran war, had to admit that that is true. That's what I'm saying to you.
All right. So what I was about to say was that Israel has been saying that Iran is 2 months away from a nuclear weapon for the last 3 decades.
Yeah, I don't care what Israel says.
Let me
this is not about Israel, Tom. This is about our CIA. This is about our intelligence, the NSA. This is about our people. I'm not relying on Israel's intelligence. I'm telling you what our intelligence said to our joint chiefs of staff, not Israel. I don't care what Israel thinks is going on. So, and nobody does at this point in time. We're talking about issues here at home, support for what our president is doing to protect us and our allies, and one of which is Israel, but not all of them are Israel. I mean, there's England, there's Italy, there's France, there's all sorts of other places too that were under a threat from the fact that, and by the way, the UAE, they're not so thrilled that their power plants are also getting bombed by crazy jihadists in Iran. This has nothing to do with Israel. This has to do, we did a joint program with Israel. Okay. Like-minded people, we both saw the danger. They may have thought it was more imminent than we were, but we recognized it too, separate from them, Tom. This is not about Israel.
Okay. All right.
You think that's funny?
I mean, I think it's funny how angry you're getting.
Well, sure, because I'm talking to somebody who says the sun isn't in the sky. You know, you're basically saying the sun's not up there. And I'm like, I'm looking right at it. And you're saying, no, it doesn't exist. That's what you're doing. I am looking right at the reports of what Iran was capable of, and you refuse to admit that they exist. That's why I'm getting excited.
Telling you, you're talking about. Do you not trust the IAEA? It's the IAEA. Are they all Hezbollah? Are they in with? Are they?
I have no idea who they are in with, but I can tell you this much. If my NSA and CIA and FBI and everybody else I use, along with Britain's versions of the same thing, whether they be MI6 or whatever the hell they have there, and France's group all say, yeah, they're months away. They're basically probably 4 to 8 months away is what the report says. 4 to 8 months away from having nuclear missiles, and they have enough enriched uranium for 10 warheads. That was the consensus that sent the president, who was working for peace around the world, into and bringing out the B-52s from out of their hangar. That's the report that did it. And even mainstream media, who despise him and try to submarine him every time he gets, had to admit, oh gosh, look at that. And that doesn't mean that the talking heads don't go back and try to cover that up and ignore it and say, oh no, he's Israel's puppet or whatever. Doesn't change that report from last spring that sent the Joint Chiefs to the White House going, we have a problem. You know, it's basically, along the lines of the Apollo 13, Houston, there's a problem. In this case, it's White House, there's a problem, and that's what happened. But you don't want to know about that because you don't want it to be true. And so that's why you're ignoring and laughing at me, because I'm like, what is wrong with you? So, I mean, the sun is in the sky, Tom. I'm looking at it. I'm looking right at the reports that say that they were 4 to 8 months away from having a nuclear weapon, and they had enough enriched uranium to do it. And that is why President Trump responded, because if he had waited longer, there would no longer be a reason to respond, because they would have already blown something up. There comes a point where you can't walk something back because they become too dangerous. And once they have the missile, then you really can't do anything to stop them. That was the point. So I appreciate the call, Tom, but I'm getting a headache from talking to somebody who won't admit that they're looking straight at something and say it doesn't exist. It really just, I get this pain in my frontal lobe. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it very much. Let's go to Jack in Haverhill. Jack, welcome to WRKO. How are you? Oh, you know what? Jack, I'm going to have to hold you there because we're going up against a break. Negotiate or is it going to be Bridge and Power Plant Day on Wednesday? Which way will President Trump go as the ceasefire with Iran ends? This is Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Kuhner here on the Kuhner Report. And let's go to Jack in Haverhill. Sorry about that, Jack.
Hi, this is Jack. Can you hear me?
I can. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. So which way do you think President Trump will go, or which way should he go on Wednesday?
Well, first of all, I want to explain that I'm an infantry veteran, and I believe that we should do some more negotiation.
Thank you for your service, Jack.
Okay, and I think that if Trump had not torn up the agreement, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action that we signed in 2015 with Iran, if we had held to that, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in today.
Okay.
I think that was a mistake on Trump's part. God knows why. He feels that he thinks he knows everything, but that's the only reason I can figure, because that agreement, as you are well aware, was signed by Russia, UK, Germany, China, and France. But Trump, who thinks he's God's gift to the world, figures that he's going to tear it up because he didn't like Obama. The second thing I wanted to bring up is that I think it's important to recognize that Trump's a bully.
Okay.
And you read what he does, for example, these tweets using profane language to address an enemy that we want to negotiate with is not the way you do things. I think that Trump's history of being a bully as a real estate developer and all the other actions that he's taken is not indicative of a true leader that we need in the Western world. If we're to negotiate, we need to have people that have some flexibility. And I don't think Trump or Witkoff or Kushner, Jared, they have the capability to negotiate in a positive manner with the Iranians. Now, perhaps J.D. Vance might, and I have much more faith in him than I would with Witkoff or Kushner in negotiating some type of an agreement that we can reach where we are willing to give in to certain of their demands and they would give in to some of our demands.
Well, that's how most negotiations work. I agree with you. Yeah,
exactly. But I don't see Trump as a negotiator. He's not. He's a bully. All he wants to do is insist, read his language in all of his tweets, in everything that he has corresponded with the Iranians. He does not want to give up 1 inch. And I don't think he's going to be successful.
Jack,
so we're going to have a stalemate, and this is going to continue because Trump is going to be taco. He's going to chicken out again. We're going to extend this for another 2 weeks, and that can go on for a while, which is not bad.
So can I respond to what you just said, Jack?
Not put boots on the ground because Trump has no skin in that game.
Okay. No, I think I've let you put your point out there. I just wanted to respond a little bit. First of all, I find it interesting that on one hand you're saying, he's a bully and he won't negotiate. On the other hand, you're saying he's going to be taco, that he's going to chicken out and not do anything. I don't think you can be a bully and chicken out at the same time. I think it's one or the other, not both. And I don't think he will chicken out. But, time will tell which one of us is right on that, Jack. But you asked this question in the beginning. You said you didn't understand why President Trump had withdrawn from the Iran nuclear deal, also known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And he did withdrew because it was a horrible, one-sided deal. The reason why he withdrew from it, you asked the question, you said, I don't know why, I'm telling you why, is because it failed. It did not protect U.S. national security. And specifically, it didn't address Iran's ballistic missile program and its sunset clauses. There were sunset clauses built into that were expiring, and then Iran could do what they wanted. That's why, Jack. So because he felt that agreement was a false shield. It wasn't just because Obama had done it. He's not childish. He did it because it did not serve the American people's interest. In fact, it went against the American people's interest. The deal was a disaster. It didn't prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons in the long term and allowed them to fund malign behavior in the Middle East. In other words, allowed terrorism. It didn't stop them from doing either of those things. Now, I understand that there are many people who felt that, including you, I guess, that felt that the deal was effective in limiting Iran's nuclear capabilities. But as it turns out, when I was just talking about with the last caller regarding the CIA reports, Iran last spring wasn't years away from having nuclear weapons. They were months away from having nuclear weapons. That should show you how the Iran nuclear deal was useless and did not work. And he just hung up, so I can't have a continued conversation with him. I guess we don't want to discuss something when you have actual data at you. We only want to be able to vent. And, I wouldn't say he yelled. He didn't yell. He was, very strident, I guess, in his opinion, and you have the right to be that. But what I am saying is that you're misrepresenting what happened. President Trump also, I want to respond to that. I don't think President Trump is a bully. Now, I understand those tweets, those statements on Easter regarding, hey, Obliteration Day is coming and so forth. I think that was posturing, and I think we've learned from the fact that a ceasefire came from that. It was posturing. He was speaking in a language that he felt the Iranians could speak in, and that is, he was threatening, because that's what they do. They threaten. They like to threaten. And President Trump was trying to speak in the language that he thought they would understand, and it worked, didn't it? He got a ceasefire out of the deal. And it was funny. He was on with when he was on with Maria Bartiromo. I think she asked him regarding the fact that his voice was going hoarse, and he basically said, "Well, the reason why it's going hoarse is because I've had to yell. I've lost my voice yelling at Iranians." And I know we had that cut. I'm just looking to see if we still have that cut, because I found it pretty funny. And he said the reason why I yell at the Iranians is because that's the language that they are understanding. He doesn't mean the people of Iran, the Persians. He's talking about the IRG, the leadership. Basically does not negotiate in good faith, and they only negotiate if they feel that there is a oh shoot, I just went blank on the name, that they only understand coming from a position of strength, or even, dare I say it, craziness. Yeah, here it is. So this is Trump explaining why he has laryngitis. Cut 102, Mike. Cut 102.
I've been screaming at Iranians all day, yes. A little bit of a laryngitis because of my I've been screaming at Iranians.
So the Iran leadership you're screaming at?
You know why? Because that's the only thing they understand. They don't understand being nice. They understand the way I have to do business. I treat all people differently.
Yeah, so I think, that has a lot to do with why he was posturing like that on Easter Sunday. So I don't think it was about being a bully. It was about trying to communicate in a way that he thought would be effective. And guess what? It was effective. He got a ceasefire out of the deal. And then, but I find it really interesting, Jack, that one, you couldn't stay on the line, and two, your next breath after calling him a bully was to say that he's going to turn out to chicken out of this ceasefire and trying to negotiate again, when as a former infantry veteran, you don't want people to go to war, and in fact you're looking for him to negotiate some more. So it seemed to me that and I still thank you for your service. God bless you for serving in in the infantry. But it seems to me that you are so Trump dysphoric that you can't even see straight. I mean, seriously, even within your own argument, you are conflicting with yourself. So I'd say, you're driving, so take a deep breath and maybe seek help for that, because your response was kind of like all over the place, and it completely ignored facts, things that are fact-based. I'm just saying. But I do appreciate you taking the time and trouble to call. Let's go to Dan in New Hampshire. Dan, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, Sandra. Thank you for taking the call.
You're welcome.
It makes me absolutely sick to listen to these lily-livered liberals. Unfortunately, they've been totally disillusioned, lied to by our media, the propaganda. They cannot see the forest through the trees. And the fact of the matter is if you were queer or you were a transvestite and you were over in Iran, they'd ask you, let's go take a look at the view at the top of this building. And when you, being naive, walk up there to see the view, you'd see it all right, because they'd march you right to the edge of the building and they'd throw you off.
Yeah.
So as far as the people are concerned that are backing this patsy type approach that they'd like to take against the people that don't know what it is to give in. They're Persians. They've been for centuries fighters. They've been combative. They've been for the last 50 years threatening us. We're the great Satan. And Israel, they're the little Satan. Quite honestly, what Trump should do, much like I spoke about a couple of weeks ago, continue the blockade.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's going to affect the people, but it'll stimulate the people to react. And that means to not stand up to this regime any longer. When they start going without food, medical, and I know that it's pressuring them, but they will stand up against this regime the way that they want to, and the way that the 48,000 people that were killed by Iran for standing up. In this country, you get to do that. Over there, they kill you. And quite honestly, there was a wrestler that was a great wrestler. He stood up.
Yeah, 18 years old. He was an 18-year-old kid. 18, Dan, seriously.
Yeah, and they killed him, hanged him. They did something that was terrible. He's no longer around. So the bottom line is that you don't soft shoot people that are trying to kick you in the balls. And quite honestly, these people are trying to snow us and they've snowed Obama, they've snowed Biden, we've given them money, pallets of money, we tried to placate to them, we've done everything about trying to be nice, and what have they done? They've caused nothing but trouble through the Middle East and around the world through their proxies. They've gone after Israel. They've gone after Saudi Arabia, and they've also, unsettled that whole entire region. And now we have a chance to put it all to rest. And it's because of Donald Trump, who's got the guts to be able to stand up against these people and basically calm the entire Middle East and the rest of the world. These people are destructive. They're killing their own people. They don't care about, let's face it, they would use a nuclear weapon so fast that all our heads would be blown off. And that's what's going on in this situation. We need to continue this blockade. We need to, end this ceasefire. I wouldn't say going into their infrastructure, because let's face it, it would cause a huge refuge issue and other associated problems. What I would do is continue to completely obliterate the Strait of Hormuz, continue the blockade, as much that Victor David Hansen says. I believe he's a very smart guy.
Oh, yeah. Victor Davis, very smart man. Yeah.
Yes. And if
brilliant
you
writer.
To him,
yeah, great guy.
Yeah. And quite honestly, if you listen to him, we're not that far off.
Yeah.
We're probably 2 or 3 weeks, if we continue this blockade, to put these people to their knees.
Yeah.
And what will happen is that instead of firing off all these missiles and bombs and completely, destroy their infrastructure, we just and choke until they can't stand to be choked anymore, and then they'll capitulate.
Yeah, you need complete capitulation in order to. You can't have it. I think what President Trump is learning, and, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, I think what he's learning is you can't leave them anything. Because if you leave them anything, they're like the Black Knight. They will, as long as he had his head, he was going, it's just a flesh wound. I can still fight. And you're looking at a guy with no arms and no legs. And it's like, dude, seriously, you're just a loon. And that's what they are. I mean, as long as they can talk, I think that's absolutely correct, Dan. I think you need to take everything away, which means, from what I'm hearing from you, is that Wednesday needs to be bridge and power plant day and no more extended ceasefire. Is that what you're saying?
That we discontinue the ceasefire, but we pay attention to the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah.
Try not to get into the infrastructure. And in the event that if we have to move ahead and do that, then we do that. But
well, we're certainly paying attention, Dan, to the Strait of Hormuz. We blew a hole in one of their ships yesterday. They wouldn't stop, so we blew a hole in it, boarded it, and President Trump says we're checking out to see what's in their hold. So we've already done that.
So. And quite honestly, ceasefire, definitely stop it. Continue the blockade. I think the blockade has crippled them. And let's face it, the infrastructure of the people, when you can't eat, there's no gas, there's no jobs, there's no currency, there's no economy. The people are going to stand up against this rogue government, and they're going to have their day. And we're not that far off. Mm-hmm. We just have to continue with the stranglehold. We don't necessarily have to blow them to the end of the earth. I mean, we always can.
Yeah.
But
bombing is of the last resort, and you always have it. So what you're saying is, do what you can without bombing. Maybe it's just keep the pressure on the economic stranglehold, and so you maybe not extend the ceasefire, but you just focus on the Strait of Hormuz. And if at any point in time they just really, really will not come to the table, then go ahead and bomb the bridge and the power plants. Is that what you're saying, Dan? I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. I think that makes a great deal of sense from both a resource standpoint and a humanitarian standpoint. That way, as few people as possible will be harmed by any military engagement. And at the same time, hopefully, and I think you and Victor Davis Hanson are right, I think we are very close to the end, and that is on the plus side of not extending the ceasefire, but maybe you end the ceasefire because they're not abiding by it anyway. They're shooting at Indian ships going through the Strait of Hormuz, so don't give them that. And that also enables you to just go ahead and launch the planes whenever you feel like it. Thank you so much for the call, Dan. I appreciate it very much. Let's go to Bruce in Woburn. Bruce, how are you today, sir? For me, you howled for me, Bruce. Thank you.
I howl for you every day, Sandy.
Oh, that's
I love
so
you
sweet.
in a non-sexual way.
That's very sweet. My husband's relieved. Okay. Yep.
I feel so bad for you that you had to deal with Tom and Jack, and Jack's from New Hampshire, and it's just unbelievable. It's like Bill from Sudbury and Chris from Gloucester and Frank from Gloucester. But that last caller, my exact sentiments. Let's not go too crazy here. Mm-hmm. I believe in Trump 110%, and these people, they just hate him. And it's not about him. It's about us and the world.
Yeah. They cut off their nose to spite their face, sort of, Bruce, don't they? I mean, it's the issue that I have with people like Jamie Raskin in Congress, who is just hates Trump so much that you could basically say to him, the truck can, you can either hate Trump or protect your mother from getting hit by a truck, and he'll let his mother get hit by the truck if it means that he can get to Trump. I mean, they don't care what damage. They don't care what lies they have to tell. No matter what Trump does, it has to be bad. Which is why, Bruce, when I was, looking, when I was doing research on the reports that the Pentagon had for going after Iran, that I checked on, that I was just amazed to see CBS, who really does not like Donald Trump and does their best to skew things. We're like, yeah, we can't, there's nothing we can do about this. We got to tell you that, in fact, there are reports from the Central that they were close to having, weapons. And so, I mean, do you not believe that more than you would believe, say, a blog in Politico where they go, oh, no, they were 10 years away from having any weapons. And you're basing that on, I had a dream the other night. And that's basically what I'm hearing from people. And it's like, guys, look it up. Go look this up and go to the sites that hate Trump, because if they'll tell you about something that is positive for Trump or positive and supportive of something he's doing, you got to really take that as gospel truth, because they had to agonize before putting it out there. And on the other side of that, Bruce, people who would rather see us, the Democrats who are out there who would rather see us lose to Iran than give Trump credit for protecting us. That's kind of like, that's insane, don't you think?
These are twisted people. And by the way, happy Patriots Day. And hopefully there's no Sinai brothers going to ruin our parade. And I just want to pray for this country. I have a lot of faith in the people of the world that believe that these are evil people, and then they can't be trusted. We got to smoke them out like rats, and let's go after those fast little boats that they have. Let's take the ceasefire off. Let them, because they're not abiding by it, and we have to defend Why do we have to defend everybody? Because we are who we are. And I believe in you, Kuhner country, Donald Trump, and the United States of America. Well, the rest of the world, I don't trust the rest.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be in that group that you do trust, Bruce. Thank you so much. I appreciate the call. President Trump has a big decision to make on Wednesday. Extend the ceasefire with Iran, or consider it bridge and power station day and send in the bombers. What is your advice to the president? Let's go to Alex in Carlisle. Alex, welcome to WRKO. How are you? Alex?
Yep.
Oh, there you are.
I'm here.
Yep. I gotcha.
How you doing? Everything good?
Everything is fine, sir. Thanks for asking. So what would you advise President Trump?
I'll tell you, I am so sick and tired of what he's been doing to me. I love the Trumper. I'm a Trumper all 110%, but he keeps lifting my hopes up, and then the next thing I know, I'm down. And I'm like, jeepers, I think he's getting played. I truly do. And I don't think he's the kind of guy that you can play, but he has got to make a decision here. This is just nuts. It's ridiculous what he's doing. I think that's the key, Alex. What you just said, it's nuts. I don't think he's getting played. I think the problem is he's not used to dealing with crazy people, and he's used to dealing with serious people who are seriously negotiating. And these people, I think, for multiple reasons, which we've discussed today, are they're one. I think there's a level of insanity that goes on here, and two, I think that the people who are negotiating may not necessarily be the people that can negotiate, because they're fighting for power. You have factions fighting for power. So this group makes the yes, we will abide by that, and they're reasonable people. But then you've got the crazy people over here saying, yeah, not me, and then they fire on the ships in the Strait. I don't know. I mean, do you think that could possibly be playing into it? think that if this keeps going on, who are you dealing with? I feel like a landlord who's getting told by the tenant, you know what? I'm sorry I missed the deadline. I've got the check in the mail. It'll be there this week. This week comes. Oh, you know what happened? It came back. I forgot to put the stamp on the envelope. I'm going to do it again. You'll get it next week. I mean, it's just one.
And then you get it, and it's
other.
Not signed. Yeah, and the check's not
right.
signed. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just this is getting to a point where he says if this doesn't happen, he's got to give them the deadline. And these guys they're not listening. Listen, this is it. This is the day. It's either now or never. And then, they're going to negotiate now. And all of a sudden they do it. 3 days go by or 3 hours. And the next thing you know, we changed our mind. We're not going to do it. They fired on a ship in the Gulf of the Strait of Hormuz. And we're back to square one again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just kind of ridiculous. I don't understand what's going on. I feel bad because I'm 100% behind the guy. But it's if I was with him to say, hey, Don, please, don't listen to these guys. This is their mantra. This is what they do. Yes, we will do. Yes, no problem. And then boom, it just goes down the tubes. And I feel like I'm being let down every time. I feel terrible about that.
I don't disagree with you because on Saturday morning I'm like I see the headlines. Ships fired on in the Strait of Hormuz. I'm like, okay, well, first of all, how disappointing. 2, foreseeable. So it's not like it was a shock. And that's the problem. And that led me in the beginning of the show to say, it's like Lucy in the football, and with Charlie Brown. I mean, I promise I won't pull it away this time, Charlie Brown. And every time he goes up and every time she pulls it away. And it's like, the response is, oh, good grief. And President Trump is Charlie Brown and this in Iran is Lucy. And it's like, okay, at what point do you say, no matter what she says, she's going to take that football away? And that's kind of the point that I am at now with Iran. I understand letting it, giving it the extra chance because that extra chance means that somebody else will not get killed. And that is worth maybe going a few times more than you would think is necessarily healthy on the off chance that this time it will work. But at some point, it's crazy to go along with it. And you realize that these people will never be playing straight with you. And so do you think he's reached that point now? And it sounds to me like you would say, enough, Mr. President. You've given it the good college try to save people's lives, to protect as much infrastructure for them to rebuild as possible. It's just not going to work. And it's time to take out the bridges and the power plants. Is that the advice that you would give him, Alex?
Fortunately, that is the advice I would give him. And I just think that, if there's enough people who claim, if you listen to the young lady who always has the flower in her hair, Ahmadinejad or something like that.
Yeah. I know who you mean.
These people, we want to take it over. We want to do this. And then you see the TV and there's a sea of people with their hands in the air. Death to America, death to America. So who's playing who here? I don't know any other way around this. I mean, we're either being sold a bill of goods and we're not buying it, or they're really trying to take us to the cleaners here. I hate to say it, but yes, go in, do what you have to do. How do we get arms to these people who are supposedly want to overthrow these nuts and take over with real people who have half a brain about what we want to do in the future? Look at the place the way it was prior to 1979. Yeah. I can remember being in the service and they had people from Iran being trained in aviation equipment and things like that, how to fix helicopters, how a jet works, that kind of stuff. Yeah. They were being brought here because we had an agreement with them.
Yeah.
And this place was like a paradise. And then these nuts came in with this, let's face it, they go to meetings on mules with sandals. So,
I have friends. I have close friends whose families were forced to flee at the time of the regime.
Absolutely.
And, lovely, educated, kind people. And one friend of mine, God bless her whole family, her father was a doctor in Tehran, and they moved to Paris. It was and at the time there were like 6 of them living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Paris because they just had to get out and went where they did. And her dad stayed behind because he was a doctor, and he didn't stay behind for the regime. He stayed behind for his patients. He was worried that his patients were not going to get any medical care, and he cared very deeply about them. So he stayed behind with the family dog to try to help as many of his patients as he could. And the IRG started to hassle him, and to the point where they killed his dog, and they would vandalize, his house because they knew he was not supportive. And before they could kill him, he got the hell out. But that's what people were faced with overnight, basically. And they, part of them, you now have a new generation of people living here and who've never lived in Iran. Their parents did, but they didn't. And so now they don't really have an allegiance to Iran. They have an allegiance to the U.S. But those people who left and those people who tried to fight, the problem that you have is all those people are gone now. And so now you have to show a new generation what to do. And I don't know, your question, how do you get weapons to people? Well, I think that's the problem of the current Crown Prince, Pahlavi, to go back in and see what he can do to arm his people, because something needs to be done, without a doubt. We'll be right. Thank you for the call, Alex. We'll be right back. Is it time to bomb Iran, or do we extend this ceasefire after Wednesday, which it expires on Wednesday? What do you think is the correct choice here for President Trump? We've made that our poll question today, which you can take on X at the Kuhner Report, or on our website, wrko.com/Kuhner. It's brought to you by Mario Roofing and Siding. And just to let you know where it currently stands, the question, should President Trump extend the Iran ceasefire or start bombing again? Ceasefire, 22%. Bomb, 78%. So, Dan in New Hampshire, 78% are with you. They think that we've given it a good shot, no pun intended, and that now is the time to go back to the original plan, which is, a parking lot. Or in this case, I don't think that's being a little snide and snarky. He wants to bomb dual purpose targets, which means they could be used from both military. They're not civilian. So dual purpose means bridges and power plants. That's kind of in the playbook for modern warfare, what's acceptable. And that's what President Trump says he would do if they don't come to the table before the end of the ceasefire. What do you think he should do? Gardner in New Hampshire, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Gardner?
Hey, Sandy, I'm doing great. I hope everybody's doing great in your family. And happy Patriots Day from New Hampshire.
To you, too.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We're probably going to disagree on this, but I just wanted to lay out these are sort of what I see as the merits of the argument that the United States should be hands-off. I should mention, first off, with the JCPOA that Obama negotiated and ended up getting through, actually on Bastille Day in, 2016, that actually saw 25,000 pounds of enriched uranium to be brought out of the country, and Iran stuck with that. And they allowed for IAEA inspectors and American inspectors to come in, but Trump dumped it. And I've heard a lot of people...
Well, can I just say, in regard to that, and I'm going to give it back to you, but part of the problem with the JCPOA is that, well, it embodied a straightforward quid pro quo, without a doubt, and Iran agreed to various limits on its nuclear program, and in return, the U.S., the EU, the UN were supposed to lift economic sanctions related to that. But the problem was the key elements of the nuclear problem, the sunset provisions, which were that they would not do it for 10 or 15 years, merely deferred the day when Iran would acquire nuclear weapons. And then there was also an absence of restrictions on Iran's ballistic missile program that kind of undermined the entire usefulness of the JCPOA. And not for nothing, but that sanctions relief that was in there enhanced Iran's financial ability to pursue their, how do I put it, expansionist regional policy, or, crapping on their neighbors and sending out terrorists. So it was not a really effective piece of legislation. And they may have given up some uranium, but they didn't give it all up, Gardner, and they were working on missiles. So that's my response to that. But anyway, back to you, my friend.
Okay, sure. I would probably, the cat, you might be hearing the cat meow. I would introduce maybe just a couple complications to that, which is that having signed on to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NTP, Iran was open to the inspections, and they didn't increase their refining for another year and a half until after Trump dumped it. The other thing that I would mention is that in addition to the fatwa that they had against nuclear weapons and the way that some of the Trump administration people massaged the language, for example, they would say, we've got to stop their nuclear program, but it was a nuclear power program and it was open to IAEA inspections. But in addition to that, we saw Tulsi Gabbard and many people who were involved with, as you brought up, the intelligence community, explicitly stating, and I can go to an Associated Press report, NPR. Here's the Associated Press. Tulsi Gabbard left no doubt when she testified to Congress about Iran's nuclear program earlier this year. The country was not building a nuclear weapon. She shifted some of the language to then say they have the capacity to do so if they want to, which of course we all know, but they were open to the Non-Proliferation Treaty and open to inspections, which showed that they weren't. And the final thing, I don't want to take too much time because it'll end up being okay. Yeah, I just wanted to mention also, when it comes to honest negotiations, there have been so many times when the United States and Israel have invited, even the United States' behavior with the Ukraine and Russia, but I'll stick to Iran, invited negotiations and then assassinated or attempted to assassinate these people. Iran doesn't have bases around us. Iran wasn't imposing sanctions on us. Everything Iran has done, as far as the United States policies goes, has been reactive, not aggressive. And the final thing I'll mention, just to sort of clear out, is that if people vote for the office of president, which is created by the Constitution, then I hope that they will look at the Constitution. I think there's a lot of merit to noting that Congress must declare war. There is no other option to go up against a nation state unless Congress declares war. The president has no power to do anything. He's not even considered the commander-in-chief in the Constitution until Congress declares war. That's the way it's supposed to go. So even on that level, I would hope that it would almost be a civics lesson where people could see this and they could say, there's something not functioning right here. In addition to that, we can go all the way back to Operation Ajax in the 1950s with the U.S. overthrowing Iran.
Okay, so in response to what you said, the authority to attack Iran is through a combination of Article 2 constitutional powers, and so regarding national security and legal precedents that allow for military actions without a formal declaration of war from Congress. And, while the U.S. Constitution vests the power to declare war solely in Congress, modern presidents, not just Trump, but Biden, Obama, Clinton, going all the way back, Bush, often bypass that by defining specific strikes as limited military operations, not war. And that's what has happened here. The federal government has argued that they have the inherent power to protect U.S. national interests and personnel abroad, and that's what this action was under. So in regard to, the last point that you made. Also, Iran, under the agreement we talked about that Obama put forth, only allowed limited inspections. They did not allow complete. That was an issue because, we say, well, can we go over there? No, you want to go over here. That's what was happening. And they weren't just building civilian nuclear power plants. They were also, building military assets masquerading as civil power plants. And Tulsi Gabbard discovered that as they got more and more information, that what they thought was limited ability, was in fact not. And that culminated in that report to the Joint Chiefs last year when they said, we were wrong. They do have the ability, and they are within 6 to 8 months, or 4 to 8 months, I guess it was. They're in 4 to 8 months of being able to build ballistic weapons, and they have enough nuclear material to build 10 warheads. And that's the point when Operation Midnight Hammer became effective, or they decided to launch it. Because if you waited too long and they actually had a nuclear missile online, then all bets are off. You can't stop them, because all they have to do is press a button and somebody's gone. And so it's not as clear cut as you make it appear. The Obama agreement was not made in heaven. There were a lot of problems with it, and they were not abiding by it. And that's the problem. They were very duplicitous in dealing with the inspectors and everything else. And we had given them money, by the way, to subvert what you would think would be the terms of the agreement. I don't disagree with you that if the agreement had been abided by, there would have been a 15-year period where things would be okay. But first of all, the fact that there were sunsetted provisions in there was a problem. So, they were getting everything ready for the end of that 15-year period. You can't give them nuclear weapons, period. It can't be, you just can't have them for 10 years or for 15 years. You have to never have them. And by the way, in regard to your, what you're saying is that, we were assassinating leaders. We were assassinating terrorists. And that is one thing that they've been spending the money that we gave them on doing, sending terrorists out to their neighbors, to us, to our allies, and they were funding terrorists. They're the biggest state-funded terrorist group on the face of the earth, and that's what they were spending the money on. So they're not exactly innocent guys sitting around and, look, they just killed our general. First, it's time for Kuhner's Talkback TikTok. You can leave any of us, Jeff, myself, Michael, a message by checking in on the WRKO app and just use the red microphone that's up in the upper right-hand corner. And then every Monday at this time, we play back the messages. We ask, you answer, and now we're sharing the best of this week's messages. This is Tit for Tat.
Jeff, would you let Dr. Trump have his cake and eat it too?
Jeff, that's the Statue of Liberty and the crown of thorns on her head.
Those drinks are being delivered by a bartender, or a waitstaff, period.
Hi, Jeff. The fake Pope called. He's looking for his paycheck from Obama.
Jeff, it's got 3 horns. That represents the 666.
Jeff, Mike is right. That's the Statue of Liberty dressed up in military.
Tell Pope Leo to keep his religion out of our politics.
Boomers can off. They're constantly talking down to everyone, telling us how we should live our lives. We're barely living.
When I was in the 25th Infantry Division, Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, every urinal on that base had a picture of Jane Fonda in it.
I can't believe you're married to that woman, Jeff.
Is that a slam on Dr. Grace? I can't believe you're married to them. I mean, oh my gosh. So a lot of those messages seem to be focused on the crown of thorns. That was a reference to the AI image that was out there of President Trump with the white robe and the red stole with lights coming from his hand dealing with a sick person, and it looked like he was Jesus or a saint, and he said, no, I'm a doctor. And then behind him were 3 angels, and one of the angels looked like it had 3 horns. And so Jeff's question to that was, is that Satan back there? What's going on? And most people, including these people on Tit for Tat, say, no, that was the Statue of Liberty crown, which, by the way, is not thorns. It's the Statue of Liberty is just a crown, but it did look like Statue of Liberty crowned. So, but they were military personnel with wings. So, I think they looked to me like they were avenging angels. But anyway, thank you so much for the calls. And like I said, we play this every Monday at this time. So check out the WRKO app, the iHeart app, and in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a little red button with a microphone in it. You can press that and leave a message for any of us, or for another caller too. You can also leave a message for a caller that you want to respond to, and we will play back the best of them on next Monday. So as President Trump would say, thank you for your attention to this matter. So we're going to get back to our question, basically, is what's going to happen on Wednesday? Are we going to, should we have a ceasefire, or is it time to call an end to the nutso attempts to negotiate? I know that kind of slanted the question with Iran, because, no matter what they agree to buy themselves 12 hours, they then renege on it, literally, like they did this weekend. The Straits of Hormuz were open on Friday. Saturday morning, they were closed again because ships were being shot at. And then President Trump said, yeah, no more Mr. Nice Guy. We are keeping the blockade. We shot a hole in the side of an Iranian ship, and we boarded it to see what's on there. And we basically said, no, nobody can go to Iran, where the blockade is back up again because you people are not negotiating in good faith. And he has said that if they don't negotiate in good faith, that he doesn't feel like extending the ceasefire when it ends on Wednesday. He feels like bombing bridges and power plants. So my question is, what do you want him to do on Wednesday? There's a lot of choices here. Let's go to Mike in Lynn. Mike, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
I'm fine. Good morning, Sandra.
Good morning.
I'm definitely behind what President Trump does, only he knows. Well, let me rephrase that. He may know more than he's saying.
I hope he knows more than he's saying.
That's why I meant to rephrase. I'm sorry. It's early for me. I've been up. The thing that really has me concerned are the Persian people, the citizenry, the innocent citizenry of Iran, not the regime. It's very confusing for people to hear the different words used. I'm the pro 79 Reza Pahlavi, the Shah, and I'd like to see the son get in there and get weapons to the citizenry so that they could be successful and not get slaughtered like the 48,000. And I had, personal effect of that with someone, and I believe they're gone. The phone's not being answered. So it's just, I believe I'm behind the president's decision.
Well, do you want him to do that?
Is.
What is it? But what is it that you would like to see happen?
So far, whatever he does, I'm behind it. But
you made that clear. You made that absolutely clear, Mike, that you support the president no matter what his decision is. I'm just wondering, which way you want him to go. Ceasefire extension, just literally ceasefire extension, or bombing. Which way do you want him to go?
If he said so far that he's for.
We're out of time. I'm sorry, Mike. I just tried to get you to say, but I get it. You support him no matter what, and I appreciate that, and I'm sure the president appreciates that too.